Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for our keynote speaker, a man who is known from sea to shining sea as a man who brings hope and encouragement to the American people. He comes to us from New Zealand. He has a new book out, The Enemy Within. It's on the table outside by the coffee. I am going home with one of those books, and I strongly encourage you to do the same thing. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Trevor Louden.
Thanks very much, Bill. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you understand the southern accent? Thank you. Well, thanks very much for coming today, folks. Thanks very much to Doug for putting this on. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces here. I've spoken in front of you many times before. It's great to see Peter and Gerald and many of the others in the audience. Reagan says you should always start with a little bit of levity. Well, I was in Los Angeles recently and I bought some food from a vendor, street vendor. He gave me the food, I gave him the money. He said, "Oh, you have an accent." I said, "Yes, I'm from New Zealand." He said, "Well, where's that?"
What?
And I said, "Well, it's down by Australia." He said, "Ah, where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from." And he votes people. It's the tragedy. But people always ask me why I care about the United States. I say there are two reasons. The first is simple gratitude. My country was saved in World War II from invasion by the Japanese by the massive sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway. And that's a very strong memory, folks. The other reason is related, but a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If freedom should fail in the United States, if you lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which are in grave danger, the bad guys of this planet, I'm talking Russia, China, Iran, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, North Korea, and their radical Islamic allies, and they are allies, folks. They will take this country down and they will divide the world up amongst them. If you're an ally of America right now, Australia, Britain, Canada, Germany, Israel, South Korea, Taiwan, you're freaking out right now. Because you see the leadership of this country loves the bad guys a lot more than they love the good guys. Causing big instability, folks. Your allies are looking at you and they are wondering, is it worth being America's friend? They saw what your president did to Poland and the Czech Republic. One of his first acts of office was to cancel the missile shield that was supposed to protect them from the Russians. Then they saw him abandon Georgia to the Russians. Then, when there was a genuine rebellion in Iran against the mullahs, Obama did nothing, and thousands died. Then, when the Communist Party of Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood took out your former ally Mubarak, Obama cheered them on. And now they're looking at the Ukraine, folks. And you have to remember what Napoleon said about the Ukraine. Whoever controls the Ukraine controls Europe. Whoever controls Europe controls the world. This is big stakes we're playing for here, folks. A lot of Americans don't quite understand what's at stake. You know, so far, Mr. Obama, you've got to realize the Ukrainians, they have a treaty signed in your Senate under Bill Clinton, guaranteeing them American protection from Russian aggression. They gave up their nuclear arsenal for that promise, folks. And now that they need it, where is it? So far, Mr. Obama has sent them a few $100 million of non-lethal aid and John Kerry. Think about it, people. Who is John Kerry? He's basically Jane Fonda with less testosterone. So this is about a lot more than America, folks. This is about the survival of the Western world. Because if America goes down, folks, every Western country will fall. And we think about war, we think about disasters, we think about World War II. I want to come back to a point. There was one group before World War II that could have stopped that war. They could have stopped Hitler. And that was the German churches. They had the moral authority and the numbers to stop Hitler. Right. But they decided not to get involved in politics. We'll let him have his area, keep away from us, we'll leave each other alone. They put swastikas in their churches, folks. They took the easy road. And what happened? How many died because of their cowardice, folks? 6 million Jews, hundreds of thousands of Germans, millions of Europeans, hundreds of thousands of your boys died because of that gross negligence. Now you look at the world today, folks. 30 million, 50 million Christians didn't vote in the last election for whatever reason. They could have changed the government in the last 2 elections, but they chose not to. Now you have hundreds of thousands of Christians being slaughtered in the Middle East and Africa. Whole cities being wiped out. Horrible tortures, horrible atrocities. Would that be happening if had we changed the government in the last 2 elections?
No.
How many of the Christians who didn't want to get their hands dirty understand their responsibility for what's happening to the Christians in the Middle East and Africa today? How many of you think understand that, folks? Well, we have to take that message. Anybody who's involved in churches, you have to take that message to them, people, because there's a big responsibility here, and there's a lot of gross negligence been going on. Now I want to change tack a little bit, because I want to talk about why I support Ted Cruz rather than the other candidates in the mix. And I want to go back a little bit in history. Back to 1976. You had been losing your liberties in this country, Republican, Democrat for decades. Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And the people were getting pretty darn disgusted, but they had nowhere to go. But that year, they finally got a choice. Because that year, a man came out of California who spoke of a shining city on the hill, and peace through strength, and liberty, and American exceptionalism. And hundreds of thousands of people, just like you, got fired up by Ronald Reagan's message. And a whole bunch of them got excited, and they thought, we'll join the Republican Party, we'll get behind Reagan, and we'll make sure he gets that nomination in 1976. And what did the Republican old guard, the Rockefeller Republicans, what did they think of Ronald Reagan and his supporters, people? They despised them. They hated them. Ronald Reagan was far too extreme to be elected. Ronald Reagan would destroy the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan was banned from Ohio in 1976 by that state's GOP, folks. They hated him. And they just beat him, and they gave the nomination to Gerald Ford, and Ford went up against Jimmy Carter, and Carter won. How did those Carter years work out for you guys? Barrel of laughs, were they? Interest rates up to here, gas queues round the corner, gave away the Panama Canal, gutted your military, Iranian hostage crisis, your second worst ever president, folks. You're still suffering from them today. But the really important point is this. The grassroots did not give up. They took over those precinct committee positions, the township committees, the nominating bodies of the party, the Republican assemblies, what they called the Republican wing of the Republican Party, the Tea Parties of the day. They stayed the course inside the GOP, and they got organised, and they got focused, and they got angry. And when Reagan ran again in 1980, this time they refused to take no for an answer. This time they had the strength on the ground to force the old guard to give them their candidate. And they got it. Reagan got the nomination. He went up against Jimmy Carter and he took him out 48 states to 2. Not bad for an unelectable candidate, right? People, the Iranian hostages were back on the first day. The interest rates went down. The taxes went down. The economy boomed. He rebuilt your military and he rebuilt the pride in this country, and he took out the Soviet Union without firing a shot. Any better president in the 20th century?
No.
Anyone even close?
No.
And why did you have a Reagan revolution, folks? Because for once it was people just like you who got to decide the candidate. Could there be a message for today?
Yes.
Because right now, folks, this country is Jimmy Carter on steroids.
Yeah.
And you need Ronald Reagan on meth to turn this around. No disrespect. Because you've got to go way beyond Reagan. You have to gut your federal government and you have to restore your constitution.
Yes.
You know that. He wanted to do it, but he didn't have enough support. He went as far as he could, and look at what he gave you, guys. Remember, in those last Carter years, people were seriously saying that America would never be great again. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
2 or 3 years in, what a difference it made, right? How much of a difference could one man make? But it wasn't one man. It was thousands and thousands of people like you who gave that man an opportunity to do what he knew had to be done. That is where we are today, folks. See, you have 100 years of progressivism to unroll. That might take you 20, 30, 40 years, I don't know. But one thing I do know is you have a massive battle in the next year that you have to win. Because you have to win 2016, people.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, the Democrats are going to dissolve the southern border. They're going to import hundreds of thousands of people from the Middle East. And they are going to swamp your base, folks.
Yes.
They intend, I have Eliseo Medina, the president's confidant, on tape, I quote him in my book, saying, we are going to get at least 8 million more Democratic Party votes through amnesty.
Yeah.
That is going to give us a governing majority, not just for the next few election cycles, but forever. Think about it, folks. Mitt Romney lost by 2.5 million votes. We allow amnesty to go fully through. They get 8, 10, 12, 14, who knows, million votes. Do you think they're ever going to give up power again? Ever? Obama did amnesty, executive amnesty, totally against the will of his own country. He knew it was hugely unpopular. But Obama is a Leninist. And they believe in 1 step backwards for 2 steps forwards. He gave up amnesty, got amnesty, knowing it would cost him the Senate, because he knew it was the road to the one-party state. The Democratic Party controlled by the unions and their Marxist masters. That's why he did it, folks, That's why we don't have 20 years. That's why we can't go for third parties. That's why we have to win the next election and win it big. And we're not going to win the election, people, if we have some sort of candidate who loves Common Core and thinks illegal immigration is an act of love, because the Tea Party's going to stay home, the Republicans' base is going to split, and either Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, probably with Pocahontas Warren on the VP ticket, will be running this country, folks. And they will run it forever. And if you think it ain't 4 more years of Democrats, if they get in again, it's ever, forever, people.
Yeah.
Forever. So we got to win. But how do you do it? See, Reagan was a genius. He could unite the social conservatives, the fiscal conservatives, the defence conservatives. He could bring the Reagan Democrats across. He could get the evangelicals out voting. The grand Reagan coalition. But right now, your base is very fractured. You've got 1 million libertarians who gave their vote to Gary Johnson last time. You've got Tea Party Republicans, moderate Republicans, 4 million GOPers who couldn't even be bothered voting last time. You've got Second Amendment people, anti-Common Core people. You've got, as we say, 30 million evangelicals who didn't even register. Imagine what they could do to transform this country spiritually and politically, folks, if they took on their responsibilities. And why is it a Christian's duty to look after their family, their brother, their church, and their community, but give the government to the enemy? When the government affects their family, their brother, and their church. Where do they get the idea that they have a right to throw that responsibility off? Where do they get the idea that they have a choice on this, folks, if they actually profess to be Christians?
Right.
Where do they get that idea? From the enemy. That's where they get the idea. So this is what I think, and the thing is, the Democrats' base is smaller than ours, but they can bribe every single element of it with your money. You cannot bribe your base. You do not want to bribe your base. So what must you do? You need to inspire your base, folks.
That's right.
Inspire means to breathe life into.
Yeah.
And how many politicians have we seen that could inspire us in the last few years? I would say Reagan, I would say Sarah Palin, and not too many else before Mr. Cruz came along. See, the thing is this, we talk about the young people. We've got to get the young people on our side. We've got to get them voting. Well, look, and the Republicans will say, yeah, we have to have a cool, sort of charismatic, nicely dressed candidate, nice haircut, someone like Marco Rubio. He'll get the young people voting. I say utter garbage. I've seen 2 politicians who can inspire the young in big numbers in recent years. One of them was Reagan. Think about it, people. How many 60s hippies threw away their tie-dyes and put on Reagan badges and became conservatives because of Mr. Reagan? Cindy was probably one of them. But the point is this, because Reagan could speak to the heart.
That's right.
And what do most people vote from, folks? The heart, is it not? Republicans think you talk about gross national product figures and everybody's going to get fired up. The Democrats have got a terrible message of poverty, abortion and dependency, but they sell it as hope and change and justice and fairness. We have a message of independence, of the Constitution, of liberty, of making the world a better place. And how does our side sell it? Just intellectual, pointy-headed accountancies type of stuff, which is okay for 5%. but it doesn't get the base fired up. See, Reagan could fire up the base because he spoke of a shining city on the hill. Liberty, the Constitution. He could reach the head, but he could reach the heart. There's one other politician who has inspired the young in recent times, and I don't agree with everything he says, about 80% of it I suppose, and that is Ron Paul. You look at the college campuses, folks. All the political kids there are either socialist or Ron Paul libertarians. And Ron is hip and cool and charismatic, right? He's a grumpy old bugger. But he's a principled grumpy old bugger. He stands up for the Constitution. He's always consistent and he never backs down. And the young people love him like a chocolate. Do they not? So if you want to unite the base, you have to have someone who can inspire. As Reagan said, someone who can fly the bold colours, not the pale pastels. Right. And you've seen what Mr. Trump has done by flying some bold colours, right?
Yeah.
He's fired people up. Well, Ted Cruz can do that too, but he can also speak to the head. He can speak to the intellectuals. He can lay it out. He can lay exactly his vision out, but he can inspire as well. And is that not a very rare combination?
Yes.
Is that not what you would want as your candidate?
Yes.
Let's say we want a governor. You know, we want a governor because they can manage. The IRS can manage. You know, we don't want managers, people. We want leaders.
Yeah.
We need Churchills and Reagans and Thatchers, Abraham Lincolns. We don't want Gerald Fords and Richard Nixons, whatever, and Bob Doles. We need some Bob who? We need someone who can inspire the base, because we are in crisis, folks.
Yes.
We may have one chance left at this. We cannot risk on a candidate who cannot get the whole base inspired. Now I'm going to make a little suggestion here because, I'm going to do something that's normally considered quite rude. But I'm a Kiwi, I can go home, right? Because you don't go to someone else's country and tell them how to run things. But this is a suggestion I would like to make to Mr. Cruz, and maybe you can modify this idea and take it forward. Because your base is fractured, as I said. A little bit of friction going on, you might have heard of that. We can't afford it, because everybody in your base has different agendas. The Democrats are like sheep. They will follow the leader. That's what they do best. But we don't think like that. We don't even want to be involved in politics. We have better things to do. We only do it because we have no choice left to save our liberty. No sane person wants to be involved in politics, folks. Anybody who wants to be president, that's the one you don't want to be president. Okay? And I think Ted Cruz feels a calling.
Yes.
I'm sure he'd be rather doing other things, but he knows he has a duty here, as we all have duties. So this is what I would suggest to Mr. Cruz as a technique for firing the base and helping to come to a great victory. You've got all these candidates out there, 17 of them now, some of them with great strengths. You've got a whole bunch of good conservative leaders in this country with great strengths. Now, as some of these candidates drop away, what normally happens is their base picks up their toys, throws them out of the cot, and goes with them. And we lose that big base of support. So Mr. Cruz could be doing something like this. He could go out to his base, all the elements of the base, and say something like this: we need to unify. We've got one shot at this. You have your talents. I want you on board, and this is what I think we can do. This is what I'm offering you to inspire you. As you drop out, I'm going to start naming you to my cabinet if you want that position. and I'm going to get some good leaders and bring them forward, and we're going to run as a team. I would go to Carly Fiorina and say, if and when you drop out, you're welcome to run on my VP ticket.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay?
Yeah.
And you imagine Carly going head to toe with Hillary Clinton. Because Americans really don't like men beating up on women. But it's not quite so bad if a woman does it, especially a fiery one like Carly. So you go through, and this is the dream team. You go through, and as they drop out, you pick them up. First one would be Rand Paul, Secretary of the Treasury. And he can do what he darn well wants to the Federal Reserve and the IRS, carte blanche. Ron can help him. And then for you energy voters, Sarah Palin, Secretary of Energy. Drill, baby, drill. Drill in your backyard if you want to. $1 a gallon gas for every American family. Scott Walker, Secretary of Labour. Zip those unions, Scott. Right to work in every state. And you know those federal lands they think they own out in the west? I would say to them, we're going to make Mike Lee Secretary of the Interior, and his job is going to be to give them back to their rightful owners so they can mine and farm them for their people, folks. And who do you think would make a great Secretary of Commerce, folks? Donald Trump. And his job's going to be get rid of the EPA, get rid of OSHA, get rid of the regulations, get American businesses working and employing people again. What about Secretary of Defense? Who do you think would make a great Secretary of Defense? Alan West. Absolutely. Wouldn't that terrify the enemy? Then they keep going through. For instance, Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary of Health and Human Services. End the welfare culture, Mr. Carson. Restore dignity to our communities. And then Secretary of State. It would have to be John Bolton, wouldn't it? And his job would be to flip the bird to Mr. Putin and the Ayatollahs and to rebuild the Western Alliance. And what about very important, ambassador to the United Nations? No one. Attorney General Trey Gowdy, go after those people, prosecute and jail them. Thankfully that's not a problem in your state. And then, for those millions of Christians, if they're not already fired up by Ben Carson and Sarah Palin, a lot of them don't care about politics, but they do care about the education of their children. They love homeschooling, they don't want Common Core.
Right.
I would say to them, vote for our team and your millions. We'll make David Barton Secretary of Education. Name your whole team, Mr. Cruz. Name your whole cabinet. Run as a team across this nation. Would you guys be fired up by a team like that? And would it unify the base? Because everybody's getting something, right? The evangelicals get something, the libertarians get something, the Tea Party gets something, the moderate gets something. And aren't you all Americans? Yes. Don't you all deserve representation in your own government?
Yes.
Because right now, folks, every 4 years, the Republicans play their quarterback against the entire offensive team of the liberal media. And guess what happens? Why don't you play your team against their team, folks? Because your team's a lot bigger than theirs is, a lot stronger. See, I've been, you think about it, 10 years ago, nobody talked about the Constitution in this country, except a few professors maybe. But with the Tea Party, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin, 912s educating people all over this country about the Constitution, things are very different now, folks. I think I've spoken in 43 of the 57 states now, guys. Checking you away. And I tell you what, the bluest of the blue states and the reddest of the red states, there's an army out there now. And that army loves the Constitution, understands the Constitution, and wants to fight for it. They want leadership. You put Ted Cruz up there leading an army like that, especially if there's a whole bunch of people backing him, a whole cabinet behind him, who would stand in the way of a team like that, folks? What would the media do with that one? How would the media handle Ted Cruz and a team of 20 Rottweilers all backing each other up, not taking any garbage from anyone, campaigning across this country, folks? How would they handle that one?
Not very well.
A little bit, because Reagan bypassed the media, went straight to the people. You have Ted Cruz running across this country, Ted and Rand Paul campaigning Kentucky, you know, Alan West and Sarah Palin holding big rallies in Florida, stirring the people up everywhere, folks. Imagine the movement you could get going. Imagine the union guys who would vote Democrat just to get their sons and daughters work on the oil fields, folks. Imagine the Liberal soccer moms who would vote for you if they knew they could get rid of Common Core. They don't like it either, folks. So what I'm asking from you guys, and I don't really have to ask you guys because you're already here, you've proven it. I want another year out of you of the hardest political work you have ever done. I know what this cost you guys, the time, the money and the commitment you put into this. The time away from your friends and families, your interests. You sacrifice so much and you get virtually no thanks for it. Virtually nothing. And you know what? I'm asking you for even more of it. I know what this cost you, folks, and I need more of it out of you because the next year is going to decide the fate of not just this country, but my country. Not just your children, but my children. I can't promise you very much, but I can promise you two things. If you do nothing, your children will live in slavery in this land.
Yeah.
But if you give it everything you've got, folks, everything you have for your country, your God, and your Constitution, the very least I can promise you is the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I could. What is that worth to you guys? And if you win, and you can win, you will give your children not just the amazing country that you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for?
Yes.
Thank you. So I just want to say to you guys, thank you so much for what you do for America, for my country, and for liberty. God bless America, God bless Mr. Cruz, and God bless you all. Thank you.